After we saw the Jedi getting murked right and left in episode 5, a lot of people felt pretty let down by what we saw in episode 6 of the Acolyte. But yo, man, this episode was actually really dope, and I want to tell you all about it. So let's get to it. What's up, Star Wars fans? My name is Prince, and I'm an urban acolyte. Hey, if you want the deepest Star Wars discussions that you can find on YouTube, well, hey man, you found the right place. There's no clickbait, rage bait, monetized hate, or any pseudo-intellectual alcoholics here dissing on Star Wars. There's no Disney shills. It's just deep discussions and talking about the themes and the questions that everybody should be asking about these Star Wars shows. All right, y'all. Well, let's talk about episode 6 of the Acolyte, Teach/Corrupt. So this episode explores the aftermath of the brutal battle on Kafar. We see Osha captured by Qimir, who reveals a surprising detail that he was once a Jedi Knight. Meanwhile, May, who's disguised as Osha, attempts to escape everything with Master Soul, but she's unaware that her plan has been foiled. So you know how we do here on Acolyte Squad. Let's get into the themes that stood out to me from this episode and that we're kind of building on throughout the series. All right, so Osha's past was a huge theme here. All right, so we got into the reasons for her leaving the Jedi. Osha mentioned that she failed the Jedi trials, but the specifics remain unclear. Was it due to her anger or emotional connection to her sister? Is she unable to let go of what happened on Brindok with her family and the Witch's Coven? That's something that we're going to have to stay tuned and get more details on. Why does she feel like she failed? Or was it really that the Jedi failed her? As usual, again, there's Qimir's knowledge. Qimir seems to know a lot about Osha's past, including her time on Brindok. How does he always seem to know everything? How did he know where the Jedi were located that May was supposed to assassinate? Does he have access to the Jedi's records? Or was maybe Qimir somehow involved in Osha's training when she was at the Jedi Temple and she just doesn't know it because she was a little kid? And then we get to Qimir's motives, which have been huge as we have progressed now that he's been unmasked as May's master, right? So Qimir says he's interested in the power of two. This cryptic statement suggests that Qimir seeks a powerful connection, possibly a dyad in the Force. And is Osha the ideal partner that he's been searching for? Or is he just talking about the Sith rule of two? But when you look at the lore as it's been further established, the Sith rule of two is actually referring to creating a dyad in the Force. You have a master to wield the power and an apprentice to crave the power. Since I'm talking about that, like we kind of see that with Kylo Ren and Rey, and I say Kylo Ren specifically, not Ben Solo, because you go back to The Force Awakens, you need a teacher, right? As they're in a saber lock, you need a teacher. I can teach you. And the relationship in The Force Awakens and in The Last Jedi is that Ben is trying to exert his control, his authority over Rey. They're not being seen as equals. And one of the things that Leslie Headland said about the relationship between Qimir and Osha, it's reciprocal. They're equals. She's already teased it. Yo, man, I'm really emphasizing the whole seduced by the dark side, right? Osha's already had a good look at Qimir's lightsaber. It's an interesting development, and it's just one more thing that makes me think, okay, we don't know if Qimir is confirmed Sith. What he said was, a Jedi like you would refer to me as Sith, right? If from your point of view, I'm a Sith. And I said in another video that the cast, when they're talking in interviews, they refer to Qimir as a Sith Lord. So that's where I've said, because I've seen people in the comments disagree. Oh no, he's not a Sith Lord. It's not confirmed. I'm just saying this is what the cast is saying in interviews. They're referring to him as a Sith Lord. And so I'm going to say, okay, if he's a Sith, does that mean that there's another order of Sith, another line of Sith? There are Sith outside the Bane order of Sith? Or is he like some kind of an offshoot, just like there's offshoot Jedi? Is he something new? That's something we'll have to wait and see. But it's like he's a Sith, but he still kind of acts like a Jedi because he was a Jedi in the past, right? So Qimir's motives are very interesting. That's something we're going to have to see how they develop, and Qimir's motives are going to be interesting, and maybe we don't get an answer. We'll just have to be okay with it. All right. So another thing about Qimir and his motives, he says he made a mistake with May. So Qimir admits that he underestimated May's desire for revenge over a deeper connection to the Force. And my question was Osha always his intended target? Just saying, if he knew all of this stuff about the Jedi and he knew that Osha survived and she was Master Soul's student, what if Qimir was actually using May in this whole quest for revenge to actually get to Osha? Just something to think about. The next thing, Vernestra Rwoh. All right, we really got to talk about her. All right, so Master Rwoh, we see her in two interesting situations, right? First, there's her having that conversation with the senator, and I haven't looked and tried to research who she's talking about and the names and everything, and if there's some kind of connection to the Phantom Menace. This is one thing that I picked up on, though, right? This whole thing with what May is doing, assassinating these Jedi. Vernestra Rwoh keeps saying, we don't want to alert this. We don't want to tell the High Council. We don't want to alert the Senate, because if we tell the High Council, they're going to have to inform the Senate that there's somebody out there that's killing Jedi, and we don't want this information to get out, because then it could be harmful to the Jedi if our enemies find out about this. And I kept asking, who are the enemies of the Jedi, right? At this point in the High Republic, the Nihil have been dealt with. In phase 2 of the High Republic, I guess there's like Force cults. So these people screaming about like these other groups of Force users, like even within the High Republic with that time period. And I mean, I haven't read the books. I really want to go back and read them now because this is really interesting. But it sounds like after the Nihil had been dealt with, there's like a cult that like worships the Force and worships the Nihil. So there's a religion around the Nihil that then the Jedi have to deal with. So it's like, are there enemies that like this group spawns another group of enemies? What's going on? Or maybe there's just people, senators, people who are just, they don't like how the Jedi dealt with things dealing with the Nihil. Like, yo, the Nihil killed my family. They they destroyed my planet, or my city on my planet, or something like that. And you Jedi, I'm holding you responsible for the whole thing. If you had acted faster or acted differently, right? Like the Starlight beacon crashed and destroyed my family and killed everybody, or killed my ancestors. I don't know. I saw it as people starting to lose faith in the Jedi and them actually having enemies in the Senate. So when you start looking at the Phantom Menace and the Clone Wars and the separatist movements, right? Like we've already seen the Nemoidians, the Trade Federation. We already saw that in the first episode. You can start to see that, yo, man, this didn't just come out of nowhere, and it wasn't all that difficult for Darth Sidious or for old Sheev to start to work to create enemies and people who were against the Jedi and kind of wanting to see them knock down a few pegs. That Vernestra Rwoh conversation kind of set that up for me. It might have had some deeper implications, but I mean, that's essentially, you might be able to get into some specifics if you look at the names that were involved, if they, are people who were still around during the prequels. But the big thing you're seeing there is that there are people in the Senate, people seeking political power who are enemies of the Jedi. The big thing, though, is that we saw the scars on Qimir's back, and then immediately it's like, oh, and here's Vernestra Rwoh, right? So is there a possibility of Rwoh being having some kind of connection to Qimir. Maybe she's the one who threw him away. Osha believes that Qimir's Jedi Master was the one who threw him away. He didn't really give her an answer. So is there a connection between them? The expressions that I saw from Master Rwoh is that during her investigation is that she seems to know something. I'm going to tell y'all why when I get through all of these themes and everything, right? So then Soul's actions, is he acting out of survival or is there some deception, right? Soul's decision after he, realizes that, yo, man, I've got May and not Osha, right? He stuns her. He's using an emergency beacon calling for help. And as soon as the help team, drops from hyperspace, he makes the jump to hyperspace and leaves and turns off his comms and everything. And it's like, what's going on? And so, like we see Master Rwoh on Kafar with that Padawan Moog. Moog seems to believe that Saul turned and killed his strike team or his investigation team. And now he's on the run. So things aren't looking good for Saul. And it's like, what's going on? Now, my thinking is that Saul wants to have a chat with May and he needs to be, somewhere where, he won't be interrupted. But I think he's going to get May to lead him to the planet, the unknown planet with all the Cortosis mines. Many people seem to know the name of the planet from Legends. And it's probably confirmed to be that planet, but I'm just going to refer to it as the unknown planet for now because that's what's official as far as the show is concerned. Until it's official. But I love that Leslie is doing all these deep cuts to Legends and making things from Legends part of the official story. And notice I say the official timeline, the official story, and not the Disney canon, because there is no Disney canon. There's only George Lucas's canon, the A canon. And what Lucasfilm is doing is expanding the A canon. So as usual, the guys who say all this stuff about breaking canon and breaking lore, they always have talking points but no facts, right? They just talk to get people enraged and incensed, but there's never any facts to what they're saying. The overall themes, let's jump to those. The overall themes that we've been building on, right? So there's the allure to the dark side. This has always been about power and who can control power, just like Mother Anastasia said. It's about power and the right to, and the person, the group who has the right to say who gets to use that power. Qimir said, I have my power and I want to use it the way I want to use it, free, without any interruption from you Jedi, right? So Qimir's teachings and manipulation highlight the seductive power of raw emotions in contrast to the Jedi's control. Now, I thought it was interesting that, because, we've been dealing with, this person cut themselves off to the Force. Obi-Wan cut himself off to the Force. Luke cut himself off to the Force. I really liked that Osha really explained that better. This is the Jedi teach that, you do this training and this is how you connect to the Force. And, it's essentially, if you don't use it, you lose it, just like a muscle, right? If you could bench press 300 and then you just stop bench pressing, stop working out, maybe you dislocated a shoulder or something. You're not going to have that upper body strength to bench press 300 anymore, right? You might struggle with your warm up weight, and you probably will, especially with a major shoulder injury, right? So if you don't use it, you lose it. And Qimir's like, that's just what the Jedi teach. That's not true. So I thought that was interesting. So it makes a lot more sense, when people say that, they cut themselves off to the Force, they just stop training, right? And they over time, they get dull, right? You don't keep the knife sharp, it gets dull. Don't cut the same way. Right. So the next overall theme, deceptions and lies. So this is one I've always talked about. I said, everybody's lying. They're always, and that's the reason it's so hard to keep track of the story, and understand what's happening is because everybody's lying. And so we're trying to get the truth, right? It's like we're slowly starting to unravel. And at some point, somebody's got to sit down and say, hey, here's the truth, right? So deceptions and lies. This episode is riddled with hidden agendas and characters playing their own games. Who's truly trustworthy? Everybody has an agenda, right? May's pretending to be Osha. Is Qimir, how much of the truth is Qimir telling Osha? Master Soul, what's he really up to, right? First he was being tricked. Now, instead of, he's sending a distress signal to Coruscant. When Coruscant arrives, he bounces. What's he doing? And then he's carrying, the truth about what happened on Brindok. And it's like, if I ever came across you, May, I always had something I wanted to tell you, but first we got to have a talk, right? So what is it he's always wanted to tell May, and what is it that, what is this talk, which probably has something to do with why they were there on Brindok and what actually happened, when the Witch's Coven, exploded, right? Because there was an explosion. We say fire, there was an explosion, right? What caused that explosion? It killed everybody and separated the twins, right? So, and then of course we still got unanswered questions. So this episode left us with more questions than answers, particularly regarding Osha's past, Qimir's motives, and a possible connection between Qimir and Master Rwoh. And I'm going to add to that also whatever Master Soul is doing, evading the Jedi and whatever this talk is that he has to have with May. I'm going to tell y'all what I think, but I want to get to these last couple of questions that I want you guys to leave with, even though what I'm going to tell you to close the video is probably going to make you forget everything else. All right, so the big questions, remaining mysteries. What exactly is the power of two that Qimir seeks? Is this something that has to do with what the witches, the power of one becomes the power of two, becomes the power of many? What are the witches actually talking about? Could the witches have figured out a way to create dyads in the Force? Or did they actually do that with Osha and May? Right? I have a feeling that, and I said this, I think in my first video, that I think when we get to the mystery behind how Mother Anastasia created Osha and May, that it's going to unlock some mysteries or give way to some mysteries, to some things that the later Sith, the big Sith that everybody want to hear and see in this episode, in this series, some knowledge that they would want to know. I just have a feeling. I could be off, but I just have a feeling. All right. Other question. How did Qimir acquire his knowledge of Osha in her past? Next question. Was Vernestra Rwoh ever Qimir's Jedi Master, or is there another connection between the two of them? Next question. What is Soul's true plan for May and for Osha? And then the last question, I don't know about this one, but what significance does the Cortosis helmet hold for Osha and her connection to the Force? I know why. I forgot. I'd written these like right after I saw the episode, and it's been a week now almost, right? When Qimir's talking to her about putting on that helmet, the way he talks about it is like the cave on Dagobah, right? It's just you and the Force and whatever you take with you, which is the same thing that Yoda says to Luke before he goes into the cave, right? Your weapon you will not need, right? The only thing like Luke is like, what's in there? And he's like, only what you take with you, right? And Luke takes his fear of Vader, right? And he strikes down Vader. The helmet explodes and Luke sees his own face like, yo, like if you strike down Vader, this is what you're going to become. And it takes him up until, he chops off Vader's hand in Return of the Jedi for him to rip for that lesson to come back to him. Like, oh, if I kill my father, I'm going to become the new Vader, right? I'm going to turn to the dark side and the Emperor wins. Palpatine wins, right? If my father kills me, he wins. If I kill him, he wins. So the only answer is to put down my lightsaber and not participate in this anymore and hope for the best. And what happened? Well, we all know. The good man Anakin Skywalker returned, saved his son out of love, and fulfilled what the chosen one was supposed to do at that part of the story. So this is something that I'm going to keep this shorter, much shorter than my longer video that I did a few days ago. But Leslie Headland talked about this movie that's part of her inspiration for season 1 of The Acolyte, and the movie is Come Drink With Me, a 1966 wuxia movie, old Shaw's brother movie, with a woman who is a martial arts expert named Golden Swallow. The big thing is that she said that Qimir's character was inspired by Drunken Cat, who is a drunk, homeless guy who takes care of homeless orphans. But over the course of the movie, we learn that he's actually a martial arts expert. And the interesting thing is that in the movie, Golden Swallow's brother is kidnapped by this gang. The gang's hideout, they're being sheltered by this Buddhist temple, and the abbot over the Buddhist temple is like kind of, it's almost like he's the leader of the gang, but he's not, but he's the one that's sheltering them. And what we find out, all of the beats up to episode 6, where we are right here in The Acolyte, follow the beats in the movie, right? So in the last episode, they're at Qimir's lair on this unknown planet. Osha was injured. I wasn't sure if she had a lightsaber wound, like May stabbed her with Yord's lightsaber, or if she just, when she got force pushed, she hit that rock or something, like it looked like something stabbed her, right? Because I mean, she had a hole in her shirt, she's bleeding. It appeared to me that Qimir force healed her. A lot of other people said that too. Maybe he just force healed her a little bit to stabilize the injury. The point is, he took her back to his lair and he gave her further medical treatment. Now, how does this line up with the movie Come Drink With Me? Well, Drunken Cat gives Golden Swallow a clue that the bandits who have kidnapped her brother and holding him for ransom, and her brother, their father is the governor. He's holding the actual leader of their gang prisoner. So they kidnapped her brother because they want to swap the brother for the leader of the gang, right? Golden Swallow's the hero. She comes to deal with them. They don't actually know that that's her brother. You know, they just know Golden Swallow is, you know, this badass martial arts expert and the hero of the movie. So she goes to confront the gang in their lair at the temple. She gets overwhelmed. Drunken Cat is helping her from the shadows. Now, she doesn't know that. She just thinks this guy is, you know, this homeless drunk guy who's with these orphans all the time at the inn where she's staying. He's helping her from the shadows. So she gets away. She has to make her escape because she's getting overwhelmed trying to fight all these guys, 1 versus 30. And de facto leader, since their actual leader is imprisoned, he shoots her with a poison tipped dart in the shoulder. And they basically say, okay, well, she can run away. We're just going to send our people out in the woods to find her because she's not going to make it very far. So Drunken Cat finds her in the woods. She's injured. She's been stabbed with something, and there's poison on it. So the poison is going to kill her. So what does he do? He takes Golden Swallow back to his lair, right? He's got a little house and everything in the woods. He pulls out the dart. He has to suck the poison out, right? He apologizes to her. He treats her there. Now what happens is the gang member, the search team actually come out and find where they are. They find their camp. And this is where we find out, oh, this Drunken Cat dude is a kung fu expert. He kills them. And then he does this gangster thing. He delivers the bodies back to the gang at the temple. But he says, oh, yeah, I saw this crazy fight. This little girl like beat these guys up. And she told me to deliver you a message. She said that poison that you used was really weak. Even though really it almost killed her. So she's there, she's recovering, and she's getting her strength up to go back and face the gang, in the big boss fight in Act 3. And what happens is the abbot returns to the monastery. He looks at the bodies and he's like, that girl didn't do that. Did the person who delivered these bodies, did he look like blah, blah, blah? And then it turns out the abbot he was away looking for somebody. And it turns out the entire time he was away looking for Drunken Cat. And we learned that Drunken Cat and the abbot had the same master. They took Drunken Cat in as a child. He was an orphan. They took him in. The abbot actually was the senior kung fu student, was responsible really for training Drunken Cat, but they had the same master. Now, I'm telling you all of this because what did we see in episode 6? We saw Vernestra Rwoh go to Kofar. She investigates the bodies. Now, this whole thing with Padawan Mog thinking Soul did it, notice that Vernestra Rwoh really doesn't say anything. That's there to throw us off. Vernestra Rwoh, she knows what's happening. So this is what I was saying in that longer video. I was like, for me, a lot of people were asking, because I did a premiere. Yeah, so people were asking in the comments of the premiere, is it Soul? Is Soul the abbot here? Because I was saying, since this follows the beats of that movie so much, are there other characters in the Acolyte who are kind of inspired by the characters in Come Drink With Me? The way I'm looking at it, Vernestra Rwoh is the abbot. And if she's the abbot, because just like in the movie, Drunken Cat kills these people, the abbot investigates the bodies and knows exactly who did it, right? Vernestra Rwoh seems to know something, but she's not telling Mog, because if she has some connection to Qimir when he fell to the dark side, then she's probably hiding that secret, right? At some point in her career, she was a way seeker Jedi, meaning she lost faith in the Jedi Order. She went out on her own and was just kind of, she was exploring wild space and just kind of following the will of the Force. Where did that lead her? What did she do? Who knows? But maybe her decision to return to the Order, that presented a gap between if Qimir and her were together at some point as master and apprentice, or maybe they were both training under a master. If I'm looking at this movie and looking at the Acolyte, then I would say what we're going to see next is, one, we're going to see Saul and May go to the unknown planet to confront Qimir and Osha. I see some kind of confrontation where it'll be Qimir and Osha on one side and Saul and May on the other side. That could be what we see in the next episode. But what we really need to look for is if Vernestra Rwoh actually does indeed become that abbot character. And if so, then there's going to be some kind of showdown between her and Qimir. And hey man, I don't know what could happen, but if somehow Vernestra Rwoh is taken off the map, then like I said, that would explain why the Jedi don't know anything about the Sith. Like, it's not that the Sith are extinct. The Sith haven't been seen in 1,000 years. Yet they haven't been seen by anybody because the people who saw them ended up dead, right? I mean, Maul killed a Padawan before the events in the Phantom Menace. So obviously the Sith had been seen by people. It's just they didn't leave. There will be no survivors, right? I think that's actually from Knights of the Old Republic. So y'all probably would know that unless you play the game. Manny, you probably picked up on that one. But you guys get what I'm saying? Like, actually, maybe you don't get what I'm saying. I don't know, like, where this will go. I just think it's interesting that so far this story is lined up with this movie, Come Drink With Me. And it'll be interesting to see how things play out. What I'm more interested in seeing, like I've said multiple times, is if Vernestra Rwoh lines up with the Abbott character from the movie Come Drink With Me. That's the thing that I want you guys to pay attention to. In addition to these other questions, I'll go over them again. What exactly is the power of two that Qimir seeks? How did Qimir acquire his knowledge of Osha in her past? Again, was Vernestra Rwoh ever Qimir's Jedi Master, or is there another connection? Ding, ding. Is she the Abbott character? Right? So even before I saw the movie, I was already kind of pulling at that string, pulling at that thread, right? What is Soul's true plan? And again, what significance does this Cortosis helmet hold for Osha and her connection to the Force? I think we're going to see her reconnect to the Force, and her taking her anger and everything that she's been holding on to that kept her from being a Jedi. I think that's going to break her chains. Her chains will be broken. The Force will free her. And that's going to be her descent to the dark side. And if you understood what I was saying in the other video, this is where Osha becomes Golden Swallow and May becomes not Golden Swallow. And I think it might be interesting if, even though this is called the Acolyte and we had no idea that Manlo was playing twins, what if they're both the Acolyte? One becomes this Acolyte of the dark side, one becomes a student of the light. And where it started out, Osha was a Jedi and May was trying to get a spot on the team dark side. May becomes kind of this daughter type figure to Soul. I don't know if Soul's going to stay a Jedi. That's what I was trying to say. I think Soul is going to have his heart broken, not only by Osha, but also by the Jedi Order. And maybe he leaves and walks away and, I don't know, becomes something and takes May with him. I don't know. That would be interesting, right? An unaffiliated Jedi, basically a Jolie Bendo. That would be kind of dope, right? And then what happens with Osha and Qimir? Because we know eventually, we don't know anything about Tenebris other than there was a Tenebris and there was a Plagueis. And I think it's confirmed that Plagueis was a Mun. So what's going to happen with them? Because eventually they're going to run into that wall, and that's going to, they're going to have to be dealt with in some way, shape, or form, unless they go off into the unknown regions and restart the Knights of Ren, or join the Knights of Ren as they existed before the Knights of Ren that we see in the sequel saga, and well, actually in the original trilogy, if you're reading all the comic books and everything, because they linked up with Kira to try to kill Vader and Sidious. Obviously that didn't work out. So those are my thoughts on this episode, and things I want you to pay attention to for the next coming episode. So I hope you enjoyed this one. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out. Y'all keep on breathing, and may the force of others be with you always.